Hi, good evening. The audiovisual recording live streaming of a regular board meeting. Those in attendance were informed that as per policy number 7, regular and special meetings of the board may be streamed live, archived, or accessed online. The board reserves at its sole discretion via motion at any meeting the right to not stream live or archive a meeting or a portion of a meeting. Therefore, the board reserves the right to edit any recorded portion of a meeting. So we'll have a call to order. Board chair is calling the meeting to order at 6:20. Oh, my time here is wrong. Time is 7 o'clock. And to begin the meeting with the introduction, I would like to begin with acknowledging that the Langley School District is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. We gather here tonight in an understanding of the importance of Yaistal and Sekiyais, Notsamot, and Letsamot, to ensure that we support and inspire all learners to reach their full potential. I would like to start out by welcoming those who are present tonight. So I'm Holly Dickinson. I am the acting chairperson tonight. We've got trustee Charlie Fox, trustee Joe Neufeld, trustee Star Bry, trustee Tony Ward, and trustee Marnie Wilson. For staff present, we have Superintendent Mel Gill, Secretary Treasurer Brian Isley, Deputy Superintendent Woody Bradford, Assistant Superintendent Lisa Langsbury, Assistant Superintendent Marcello Bueno, Assistant Secretary Treasurer Shin Chand, Communications Manager Joanne Abshire, Executive Assistant Debbie Jones, IT Manager and Infrastructure and Security Dale Vo, Technical Support Specialist Paul Babo, and Technical Support Specialist Vincent Montefrayo. We also have from our partner groups here tonight, Taylor Holoboff, who is the acting president of QP 1260, Jesse Cowger, Vice President QP 1260, Kenya Kerr, the LTA President, Ellen Bornowski, LTA Vice President, Kim Anderson, the LPVPA President, Alicia Rempel, President and DPAC, or President of DPAC, and Elva Morrison, QP 1851 President. So we have a couple announcements tonight. The first announcement is about Diversity and Respect Week. On January 24th, 2017, at the regular board meeting, the following motion was passed: that the Langley School District establish a Diversity and Respect Week to coincide with Pink Shirt Day in February to promote awareness, acceptance, reconciliation, and inclusion for all members of the school community. During this week, schools across the district will be recognizing and celebrating diversity through lessons, activities, and virtual events that serve to promote empathy, understanding, and the importance of inclusion. In line with our district vision, mission, and values, our board is committed to helping our schools foster an inclusive and nurturing culture. The second announcement tonight is about Black History Month. February 25th, 2020, the regular meeting of the Board of Education, the following motion was passed: that the Langley Board of Education officially acknowledges February as Black History Month. As a board, we encourage our students, staff, and families to join us in learning and celebrating the achievements and contributions of Black Canadians. Okay, so for report from in camera, we spoke about, that's me, and we spoke about personnel this evening. Next, we are on to the consent agenda, and I get a motion. Trustee Fox, thank you. Seconded by Trustee Rye. That the Board of Education adopts the consent agenda items as provided. Is there any issues or anything that needs to come out? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the consent agenda as provided? Thank you. All those opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, we are on to the consideration of the agenda. Moved by Trustee Fox, seconded by Trustee Ward? Yep. 11A. Yep. CST. Okay, thank you, Trustee Fox. Trustee Wilson? Sure. Okay.
So what are we at?
11A, so we'd be 11B.
11B. PA standards of practice. 11C. Inclusive ed guidelines. And 11D. Accessible washrooms. And I'll also be making a motion at the end of the Swiss presentation, but I don't think we need to adjust.
We're good. We're good with that. Yeah. No, it's just a motion. All right, so that we'll move forward with the vote that the agenda be approved as amended. Oh, sure. Oh, Charlie? Yeah, okay, thank you. Seconded by Trustee Rye. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, carried unanimously. Great. So tonight for number 6, we have delegations. We have the Ishtar's Women Resource Society, Peace Program and Violence is Preventable Program. And tonight we have Rena Andronic. And I believe it's just Rena here too, correct? Oh, you're Megan. Okay, so no Rita, but Megan Pommy, so the Peace Council. So, come on up. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to me speak today. I'll try and keep it short. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ishtar and about 2 of the programs that we do that affect the children in the Langley School District. So Ishtar Women's Resource Society is one of the very first women's resource societies in Canada. We have one of the very first transition houses in Canada. We've been in Langley since 1973. And in 1993, the BC Society of Transition Houses asked if any organizations would like to start something called the Children Who Witness Abuse Program. It was a pilot project and Ishtar signed on. Actually, Rena, my colleague who is supposed to be here today, signed on. And well, it was a really good pilot project because it's still going today. And we're very lucky because there's only 2 of the founding members of the Peace Program who are still working in the program. And Rena's one of them. So Langley's very lucky. In 2014, the Children Who Witness Abuse Program changed their name to the Peace Program. And PEACE is an acronym. It stands for Prevention, Education, Advocacy, Counseling, and Empowerment. And we work with kids as little as 3 and as big as 18 that have been exposed to domestic violence, have experienced violence themselves, or have experienced high levels of conflict in their homes. What we like to do is we like to try and visit kids in their schools because there is only so many peace counselors in Langley. There's 3, and we have a wait list. And I'm sure you can imagine that every single person on our wait list wants a 3:30 appointment or later. And if we took everybody, I would work through the night until bedtime. So if I can see kids in the school, they don't have to sit on the wait list as long. And we are currently doing this sometimes. Some schools are not open to having us there, and some schools are. Some schools physically just don't have the space to accommodate it as well, which I understand. But what we would really like is to have the school board's endorsement and support in reaching out to the schools and working with the kids in the school so that they don't have to sit on wait lists for a very long time. It also alleviates some financial stress on the family. They don't have to pay for gas to drive to the school, pick up the kid, drop them off. And then the parents don't have to take time off work to get their kids to appointments. And for the school, it's really great as well. I know a lot of elementary schools do not have full-time counselors. So if peace counselors could come in and work with the kids that have been experiencing violence in the home, that would take a big load off of the counselors so that they could meet with the kids who maybe aren't experiencing violence at home. And the other thing that we do in schools is called the VIP program. And that's another acronym. It stands for Violence is Preventable. And some of you have information packages, and in those information packages, we give a little description of what we would do in a presentation for different age groups and how those meet with the curriculum competencies for each grade range. So in addition to it being just a really great thing that a lot of kids need to know, because in every classroom between 2 and 5 kids are experiencing violence at home, we're also meeting some of those core needs, right? Those curricular competencies. Right now, I'm giving these violence prevention presentations to grade 6, 7, and 10. The only reason that I'm only doing those 3 grades right now is because I do not have enough time to go and see K to 12, but a lot of teachers and principals don't know about the program. And it takes a lot of time to figure out who fits in which school and how to contact them and give them all of the information and arrange back and forth. So up until 2020, I was doing great. I was in a lot of schools. I was giving a lot of VIP presentations. And then I think we all know what happened, that nobody went to the schools at all, except for the teachers, right? And since then, it's been very difficult to get back into the schools to give the VIP presentations. It would be really great if Ishtar could meet with teachers, if we could do something on a Pro D Day or come to staff meetings and explain our program and explain what we do. If we could give the presentation to the DPAC, I heard that someone from the DPAC's here today. So if I could get a name and a contact, maybe we could set something up. But yeah, really what we would just like is to get our name out there, to have you know who we are and what we do. We want what the teachers want. We just want the kids to be thriving at school, and we want them to be safe at home, and we want to be able to work together with the schools in order to achieve that. Is there any questions? Okay.
3 peace counselors right now that work within the context of our school district. Who pays for them?
So we are funded by the government, and right now it's I want to say the Ministry of Gaming is what funds the or no, sorry, not the Ministry of Gaming, it's MPSSG funds the peace program.
Pure over time. I mean, is this a year by year, or is this something that you get a 5 or a 10-year contract so that there's consistency in terms of delivery service and so on?
Okay, so Rena's been with Ishtar for 30 years. She's permanent. I've been there for 13. I'm permanent as well. And then Esther, the third, she's on a contract until the end of March, but we are hoping to renew her contract.
These counselors are the same ones that deliver the VIP program?
Yeah, I'm the only one that delivers the VIP program right now.
In terms of getting programs in schools like this that have obviously a benefit it's very difficult if you're going year by year in terms of funding and you're not there's no sustainability or prospect of sustainability, because obviously we don't want to see them end in terms of what they're doing for students.
P program's been running since 2004. And I've personally been doing it since 2012 for Ishtar. So it's, I think that it's something that could continue year after year. You're welcome. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much.
There you go. Thank you so much for coming in. I am super excited about this. I'm a teacher, so looking at this and going through it going, oh my God, yes.
Yeah, well, my business card is on the package.
Yes,
So
I've already pulled it out.
yeah, I
Aside.
can come to your school.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely fantastic, and I'm really excited to share this and share it throughout the district. I think it's awesome.
Great. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Right. Moving on to number 7, Secretary Treasurer's report.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to start off by acknowledging the hard work of Assistant Secretary Shin Chand and his team in getting us to this point tonight in preparing the district budget for the amended budget for this school year. So I just wanted to thank him for the efforts that's been gone into that, and for him to pass that along to his team, and wanted to mention that publicly tonight. In your package is the budget package that we are required to submit to the ministry by February 28th for the amended budget. This is triggered by the recalculation of the grants that trigger the need for an amended budget process. There are 4 funds, or 3 funds, pardon me, that make up the total budget that the board is responsible for approving the bylaw for. The operating fund, where we'll spend most of our time tonight, where all the day-to-day operations are spent, our special purpose funds, and our capital funds. The board does pass a bylaw that encompasses all 3 of those funds. So this is the total revenue that is in the budget package, broken down by the various funds. You can see the district on the revenue side is now up to just under $324 million in all the funds for the district. The bulk of those funds being in our operating funds, just under $255 million. And you can see that the bulk of our funding comes from the Ministry of Education as our biggest source of income. When you look at all 3 funds, that's the top line there at just under $287,000. The expense also by the various funds, you can see that the lion's share of our funding goes obviously into instruction at just under $268 million. And our expense budget for the year is just over $322 million. The bylaw that is in your package tonight is for $331,414,661, which is made up of all those 3 funds broken down on the slide, as you can see here tonight. And this slide will be up at the end, so to refresh you before trustees have to discuss. On the operations funding side, these are information that has previously been shared with the trustees at the last couple of finance facilities meetings. There have been no changes to what's in your package from what was shared with trustees at the last finance facilities meeting. On the operation grant side, on the revenue, a fairly large increase in the provincial grant of $17.5 million, and there's another slide for that, so I won't get into too much detail on that at this point. We have tuition, which is also on another slide, and then we've started to see the rentals of our facilities starting to come back to some more in line with what we were seeing prior to COVID. We're probably at about 70-75% of where we were pre-COVID for our rentals. The one thing that has really changed drastically with the interest rates that have increased are our investment income. As you can see, it's budgeted at $415,000 up to $1.8 million. It got as low as just over $300,000, I believe, last school year. So the interest rates, though bad for a lot of things, did provide good interest revenue for the district. This slide's a little busy, and I apologize, but wanted to show the details because there's a lot of things that have happened on the operating side of the grants. As previously shared in November with our enrollment increase, the top number there of those $8.6 million made up of the enrollment of 6 million, the unique needs of 2.3, and the summer school. Those are all the increases that we received due to the number of students that increased when we did the 1701 on September 30th. In addition to that, with the collective agreements that were signed this school year with the teachers and our CUPE, the ministry has provided funding for those two collective agreements. For the teachers, just a little over 5.4 million, and for a CUPE, just a little over 2.6 million. In addition to funding those two collective agreements, for the first time, they've actually provided funding for admin and exempt compensation, which is the first. So the funding that they provided for that was just over $828,000. So all in told, $17.5 million broken up over those items that we just went through. And the labor settlement funding and the exempt funding, those will now in the next funding round be rolled into the per pupil amount. That's what they normally do. They do a special grant in the year of the signing, and then they become part of the operating grant for pupil amount going forward. So they continue to be funded. On the tuition side, our international programs up about 20 students as well. Every year there's a number of students that leave throughout the year that get partial refunds, and the district keeps some funds. That was about 16.235 students this year. And then a few changes on our summer session programs, and some of the other fees that they collect went up obviously with the higher enrollment. On the expense side, there are other slides for each of these categories, but you can see the largest increase was in our teachers, followed by our education assistants and our substitute line, which is mainly driven by COVID, but I'll get into more details as we get to those. So total salaries are up just over $12.2 million. Our service and supplies just under $3 million, for a total expense increase of $16.4 million. On the teacher side, due to the growth, we added 17 divisions through elementary and middle schools for $1.4 million. We also saw a lot of growth in our English language learner category. So we added 3 teachers in that category. Our counseling ratio we had to add counseling to that to maintain the ratio. So that was 1.57 FT in teachers. We added an instructional service teacher essentially up here. And then there was $787,000 in blocks at secondary for increased enrollment. Some of that was offset by about $200,000 in late starts. Central teacher late starts, and another $555,000 at late starts in schools. And there you can see the largest chunk being the $4 million in salaries for the labor settlement funding, and $175,000 for mat leave top up, which was a benefit that was negotiated as part of the teacher collective agreement. On the principal side, we've initiated an admin support plan to support coverage of mainly our single building administrators for the second half of the year, and just to provide support to some of the schools out there that have struggled a little bit. It's been a long haul with COVID. Wanted to provide a little bit of support to our admin team and to our system for that. Also had to put some funds in the budget, $75,000 for admin leave coverages for principals that were on leave to have people in the building to replace them. The salary increases, we had budgeted $700,000 for admin and exempt, and so this is the amount above that to be more in line with what the agreements that were given out to the teachers and the QP agreements. There was a special grant that was provided to the district for early learning. So we were able to remove, it was a new position that we added in September that we had anticipated the grant. So we added an operating until that grant was formalized. So those funds are just moving from our operating grant to our special purpose grant. A little bit of change at admin time in summer session. And then when we had some administrators that have been around for a while leave and replaced with new admin that were at a lower salary for about an $87,000 impact. On the education assistant side, we added 52.9 FTE, and the next big piece there is the 1.3 million in the settlement costs for the salaries. We added 2 youth care workers that were funded out of Community Link, and this happens every year. The Community Link doesn't grow as quickly as the salaries do, so we often have to move salary costs out of the special purpose fund and Community Link and put it into operating to maintain the same staffing levels. We added 2 bus monitors, and then basically we had some late starts of about 167,000. On the support staff, their portion of the labor settlement was 700,000. We added a couple custodians due to the growth and number of portables that we had to add this year. We've added another route for our transportation, and the salary for an IT tech that started partway through the year. For the other professionals, that's the top up for the, the first is an IT supervisor position that we added for infrastructure security, and that's the salary for the year. And then the exempt increases above budget, similar to what was explained for the principals. The substitutes, this is one that COVID has really started to impact our substitute costs. So we've also had costs here from the contract. So the first line there, $593,000 is the increase in TTOC time for the contract. Or sorry, the first line, the 593 is due to higher vacancies, and absences due to COVID. So we had to add funds there. The 395 on the second line, was the settlement amount for teachers. Every year when we do the budget, we look at the late starts. For the start of the year, there was $555,000 in late starts for teachers. The other ones there didn't really change a heck of a lot. The last one for the TTOC line is the Employment Standard Act, which came into effect, was the 5 sick days for people that don't have sick benefits. So for the estimate for the year for the TTOC side is $65,000. The EOC, or the contract replacement for schools, due to the issues with illness, we bumped that budget up by $277,000, and another just under $82,000 for the cost for the settlement. And then the same 5 sick days for the impact for the QP staff was about $35,000. On the benefit side of things, they were obviously impacted by all the mentions of all the staff positions that I've just gone through with you. So there's 500,000 in the teacher that have been added to the system. $858,000 in settlement costs for teachers, $340,000 for settlement costs for QP. The the benefits on the increased ETOC and casual costs, 540,000 for QP positions, the benefits for the exempt and principals. Our WorkSafe rates, unfortunately, have increased, and that's a province-wide issue with all school districts. Our experience rating actually reduced that a little bit compared to other districts. So that could have been a higher impact, but that's one that we need to keep an eye on. Indications are that that will continue to increase on the provincial level for the school classification across the province. We took a premium holiday on benefits for teachers, principals, and QP. So that's the 1.2 million is the district share of that. So if the employee paid any portion of those, they would also have received a premium holiday for those time that we took those breaks. They varied from 2 to 6 months. Our future liability, the offset of the increase in the interest rates means our future liabilities cost more. So that went up by an estimated $80,000. And then the savings on vacancies and late starts. On the service and supplies, you can see that just under $3 million in changes there. And I will go through each of these. I have slides for all those. On the increase in the services, the inclusion Langley fees have gone up $40,000. The ISP programs, the medical with more students have gone up by $15,000. The new distributed learning model requires a new program called Bright Spaces. So there's a one-time startup of $10,000 for that. For Safe Schools, the Community Justice Initiative Association consulting went up by $42,000. Our bank service fees on KEV, which is the program that we use for in our schools for the collecting of fees and all those things at schools, has gone up $50,000. I think with the growth in the district, that was masked for the 2 years of COVID because there was less fees going through and being collected, with less things being done like field trips and those kind of things. So we had a large jump in the fees this year. I think it's an accumulation of a 2 to 3 year pent up demand for that. The employee assistance plan fees for that have gone up by $62,000. For our part of our legal is done through BCPC, and it's a program that runs through them. Those fees went up by $13,000. And there was a motion by the past board to do a transportation study on walk limits. The cost for that is approximately $60,000. And there was the IT position that we've seen hired earlier, that was removed from the consultation budget for the IT department. So that was basically a shift of funds from supplies to staffing. And then there's increased amounts at schools of $27,000. Transportation allowances of $10,000. Those are for students that are eligible for busing, but there weren't routes in those areas, so they are allowed a transportation allowance. And we've seen an increase in our field trips, obviously, with that opening up again, up by just under $32,000. Professional development, those budgets are starting to go up as well. Those were all reduced during COVID just because we couldn't do any of those kind of things. So those budgets are starting to go back up to a more historical level. Plus there was a Safe Schools grant of $10,000. Dues and fees. The international commissions, obviously more students results in higher commissions. So that's reflected in the budget by $46,000. Last year we ran a first time did a middle school bandits game where all the middle schools in the district went to a bandits game, and this is something that the district wanted to do again this year. So that's our contribution to that of $10,000. The licensing and permits, like everything else in the world, have gone up. So that's has increased by $16,000. Sure everyone's seen property values and everything going up over the last little while, and unfortunately that impacts our school protection premiums. As things go up, things cost more to replace. So the premium took a very large jump this year of $112,000. School protection's hoping that that was a one-time jump, but they based that on risk assessments and market values and those kind of things. So that was a large jump for the district to absorb this year. The supplies, trustees will recall last year we did a program in the amended budget for K-7 schools to provide athletic equipment to those schools. We will be doing a similar program for K-5 schools this year for $200,000. The Indigenous education grants have gone up, and some funds that weren't spent last year, and they'll be spent in cultural activities and presenter fees, which is under $215,000. A new program that the district is trying, GRIP, Game Ready Fitness. It's a program to encourage students to be physically fit and active in their schools for $60,000. Increase in supplies at schools of $813,000. School maintenance requests up $70,000, and technology in school $152,000. The cost to run our HVAC system due to the increased cost of the MERV filters and just increases in the parts and supply that has impacted everyone. We've had to add $125,000 basically due to inflation to the HVAC centers. And then another $80,000 for the cost of increases of custodial supplies that we've been seeing over the last little while. One of the big ones is the cost of gas at the pump. I think everyone's seen what that's done over the last little while for the district with the white and yellow fleet. It's about $254,000 in cost that has increased. And then we had another $31,000 for some furniture. The utilities, some of this is offset by one-time savings in the accumulated surplus with us running our HVAC the same way that we've been running during the COVID with higher flushes of fresh air. It does raise our natural gas and hydro bills. So that's reflected in the amended budget of $333,000, and then the cost of propane up $17,000. This is the changes in our capital items that are being funded out of our operating grants. You can see the changes from the spring to the fall. We've added $205,000 in hardware and switches to upgrade the infrastructure in our schools. Unfortunately, we had two phone systems that were deemed end of life that we're having to switch over to the Teams platform that wasn't planned to be done this year. So that's $100,000. There was a request from the tech group to do tech initiatives at schools for $50,000. That's been put in for the budget. With all the additional divisions, it required iPads and technology for the classrooms of $110,000. We have $600,000 in projector replacements. That's coming from accumulated surplus. We have increased our furniture and equipment budget for schools up to $540,000. Looking at doing an accessible playground at Douglas Park. We had done one for Nickel-Mackle last budget. The board has worked with the Aldergrove community over the last little while to do some improvements there. One of the last things we'd like to do is paint the exterior of that building for a rough estimate of $270,000. The seismic expansion of Peter Ewart comes with a contribution from the district. There's $300,000 as our share of the contribution. The total contribution for the district for that over the 3 years is $1 million. So this would be the first portion of that. That's also coming from accumulated surplus. School projects initiatives at about 172,000. The house post for the to replace the temporary one that's been loaned to us by Kwantlen is in the works. That's would be about $60,000. That's out for RFP. We had portables that hadn't been received yet in last June for $592,000 and some install costs that had to go with that of $128,000. That's all coming from accumulated surplus. And we've already ordered 14 portables for next September at a cost of $2.6 million. And the slight change in the maintenance fleet budget up $460,000. Those are also items that had not been received at the end of June that are coming in now, or have already come in. So all those changes, you can see budget at the preliminary was a deficit of $770,000. Now it's up to just over $3.9 million as a operating deficit. That will be funded out of accumulated operating surplus. So there were some items, like I mentioned, that hadn't really been received in June. So there was an amount set aside of $1.2 million for commitments that have come now since. There was the funding for the Indigenous education of $167,000 that wasn't spent last year, that it will now be spent in this fiscal period. It's mentioned on the HVAC, the cost of that. We had, when COVID started, had set aside a contingency of $5 million for those 3 months that the district was closed, and the ministry allowed us to keep those funds. We put a contingency aside of $5 million. This is the last $283,000 of that. So the district will have spent that whole contingency in addition to the funds that we received from the ministry over the last couple of years for COVID. The $770,000 was already used to balance the preliminary budget. And then there was school surpluses from the previous school year that we allow them to carry over to spend in this school year. That equaled $421,000. We had restricted $250,000 for furniture. So far we had plans for $130,000 of that. And you can see the projector replacement. We had set aside $750,000 and we have $600,000 of that. That'll be planned for this fiscal year. And the last item you can see there is the capital contribution amount. We'd set aside $630,000 and we're spending $300,000 of that this year. So there's the $3.9 million. Also wanted to go through, but not as much detail, the special purpose funds. These are defined as items that there's a liability under PSAB and has to be reported as special purpose funds, and they are for funds that are targeted for specific items that either the ministry has set aside or the grantor has set aside for us. You can see the largest change. I'm not going to go through all the little ones at the top. Most of the first 5 or 6 lines are for funds that weren't spent in the previous school year that we're allowed to carry over and spend in the subsequent. But you can see the largest amount there, the Classroom Enhancement Fund, is up $11.6 million. That's due to the number of teachers that we've put in for the restored language, for case list and divisions. And as well as an increase in the remedy amounts that are from that collective agreement being restored. There's an additional grant in mental health of $118,000. Some of that is, a new grant for $118,000. The Seamless Day Kindergarten, you can see, has increased. In the preliminary, it was $50,000. It's now up to $127,000 as we've added another program to that and expanded a little bit. We have a new early childhood education dual credit program grant of just under $90,000. And another large one being the Student and Family Affordability Fund, which the ministry announced in September to help families in need of just under $2.2 million that has been presented to the board on how that has been spent throughout the district. A couple new programs to our early learning just before, and I always get the next one wrong, and SEY2KT. And also, as mentioned early, the grant that we received for an administrative position for early childcare of $175,000. And a slight change in our settlement workers and school funding. So back to the bylaw. So what is before you tonight is a bylaw of $331,414,661. And I would be happy to answer any questions. And there's also a motion in there to unrestrict the fundings that we need to balance the budget, which would have to be before the readings of the bylaw.
I'll throw a question there just for a good measure, through the chair to the secretary treasurer. The cost of portables, it does come up. I've asked this kind of question before, but what are we experiencing with respect to inflation? So it looks like they're about $185,000 each roughly. And the second part of the question is that including, do we factor in a move, or is that just for the portable to arrive, or is that just for the portable itself?
So the funds in the budget there are for the portable and the install. The price of portables have grown drastically. We used to be able to buy a portable for about $80,000. The last four that we bought were $165,000 each, and it's anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 roughly in an install cost. So that number will continue to grow because that 2.6 is a mixture of some that were bought at a cheaper rate and some that are bought at a higher rate, but it is going to substantially be a bigger and bigger cost for this district.
Like, okay, Marnie, trustee Wilson is gonna chime in here.
I just, yeah, we had luckily sort of gone through a lot of this and been kept up to date. So I just want to thank Assistant Secretary Treasurer and Secretary Treasurer for all that work and making the presentation very detailed like that. I really appreciate it. I just had a quick question about the school admin support plan. What's involved with that exactly?
Yeah, so currently we have two administrators, one who's a retired administrator who was working at James Kennedy, and in addition to that, a second administrator who was working at an elementary school. And both have now been put on a schedule so that they go to different schools, usually single building schools, to support, either come side by side with the administrators to support planning or supervision, even TTOCing in school if that's necessary. And again, it's a day that administrators can count on. It's an opportunity for administrators, if need be, if they're behind in some of their work, to even shut their door and get some work done as well. Because as we know, the work hasn't stopped, but we still needed the additional support so that they felt that they could get through some of the more difficult time in the year.
Okay. This is the long one. That the Board of Education approves staff to appropriate and restrict the following restricted surplus amounts to balance the 2022-2023 amended budget. $1,233,788 internally restricted for commitments from 2021 to 2022. $167,804 internally restricted for Indigenous education. $283,393 internally restricted for COVID-19 contingency. $421,322 for school supplies or school surpluses. $130,000 internally restricted for classroom furniture. $600,000 internally restricted for projector replacements. $300,000 internally restricted for future district capital contributions. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried unanimously. So the next one, we're going to have to do 3 readings here. That the school district number 35 Langley amended annual budget bylaw 2022 to 2023 in the amount of $331,414,661 to be given a first reading. Comments? Okay, we'll do, yep, move it first. Thank you. Trustee Fox, seconded by Trustee Neufeld. Any comments, questions on that? Trustee Fox?
It's never enough.
Fox, never enough. Any other questions or comments?
I don't want to the money correction.
All right, all those in favor? Those opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll do the second reading of that. That the school district number 35 Langley amended annual budget bylaw 2022 to 2023 in the amount of $331,414,661 be given a second reading. Can I get a mover? Trustee Neufeld, followed by Trustee Fox. Discussions or questions? Okay, all those in favor? Those opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll do the third reading, and this one needs to be unanimous for it to be able to go forward. So that the school board of education, that the Board of Education School District number 35 Langley approves having all 3 readings of the amended annual budget bylaw 2022 to 2023 in the amount of $331,414,661 at tonight's meeting. Can I get a mover? Trustee Ward, followed by Trustee Fox. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried unanimously. And the last one. That the school district number 35 Langley amended annual budget bylaw 2022 to 2023 in the amount of $331,414,661 be given a third reading, passed and adopted on this 21st day of February 2023. Can I get a mover? Trustee Ryan, Trustee Wilson. Thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, on to number 8, superintendent report.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Excited this evening to have our Assistant Superintendent Lanchberry and Assistant Superintendent Moino present on action plans for learning. Action plans for learning are a vital part of the work that our principals and vice principals are doing in schools, and the work that our assistant superintendents do to ensure or work with our schools around their goals at the school level, and certainly having those goals connect to our strategic plan as well. In addition, I see here this evening we have Principal Ron DeQuisco from Wicks Brown Elementary, who will be helping with the presentation as well. So I'll pass it over to Assistant Superintendent Moino.
Superintendent Gill. As Superintendent Gill explained, action plans for learning are an integral part of what we do as a district. So we thought it very useful to be able to explain what an action plan for learning is, how it impacts the district, And ultimately, so that at the end of this, our goal is that you'll have a better understanding of what action plans for learning look like in the Langley School District. And so always a good idea to start with the why. I think at the heart of what we do as a district is that we work with learners to grow. And sometimes I think we forget that the adults in the system are learners as well. And so the action plan for learning is a reminder that every single adult in the system is a learner for the greater purpose, which you see on the left-hand side, so that every child in this district can be a learner. As we believe that every single child matters, it's incredibly important then that as a district, we set goals and we work to impact in a very deliberate and purposeful way what happens in the classroom. So starting with the what of the action plan for learning, I hope you have a sense of why it's important at least. In terms of what it is, quite simply, it is the goals and actions at the school level for the upcoming school year. But more than that, it creates those goals and it looks at impacts through three very important lenses in this district. The first is diversity. That's an acknowledgement that students in the school district learn in different ways. And it's up to us to be very purposeful in terms of how we are ensuring that we are meeting students in terms of where they are at as diverse learners. A second lens is that of equity. We know that not every learner in the school district starts at the same place. And because of that, again, the action plan for learning makes it a very pointed goal to be able to meet the needs of students. And again, meeting them where they're at so that we can help all learners move forward. And finally, inclusion. At the heart of the action plan of every school is the idea that every student belongs in a classroom. And so it is up to us as the educators to ensure that we find entry points for those students in that classroom. In terms of the where of the action plan, every single school in the Langley School District is responsible for developing an action plan with these goals and lenses. In my mind, a simpler way to maybe make sense of all of that is that as a district, as professionals, we have ideas in terms of what constitutes good learning. And so the action plan really is about taking that theory and turning it into practice, because ultimately it's at the school level, it's at the classroom level, and it's at the student level that we actually have the desired impacts. So turning theory into practice is really what the action plan is all about. In terms of some of those theories, at the district level, you'll see, again, this is our School District 35 Continuous Improvement Plan. It's a reminder to all who see it that we as a district are focused, and we have different elements of that focus. Now, again, it's incredibly complex. Learning is complex, but as a district, we've attempted to put this together in a way that makes sense. So if you look on the right-hand side, you'll notice four very important documents. One is the strategic plan, one is the FESL or Framework for Enhancing Student Learning. The third is the action plan, which is what we're talking about this evening. And the last are growth plans. The first two documents, the strategic plan and the FESL, those guide the work we do in this district. Our trustees are working on that with Superintendent Gill as we speak for the next strategic plan. At the same time, the growth plan, the fourth item, every school administrator, I should say, in this district has a growth plan. All of those documents come together to impact and support what happens in the classroom and to impact student learning. The last piece of this visual I'd like to point out is at the very bottom, the three circles that come together and overlap. That tells us a little bit as to actually when action plans happen. And to explain that more, I'd like to introduce Assistant Superintendent Lynchbury.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Molino. So just looking closer at the when of the action plan for learning, truly it happens throughout the year. It happens all the time. It's not just a document, but we take it from theory to practice. It comes alive in our schools and the work that we do every single day. But we do have an implementation cycle, and it starts with alignment. Alignment in September and October to ensure that all that are involved in the action plan for learning have the same understanding, share the same vocabulary, agree on the goals. Looking through the lens of equity, school teams are established. Then we're ready for the implementation phase that happens shortly after that in November, all the way through to April. And that implementation is the application of the 8 elements, which I'm going to speak to a little bit more on the next slide, to really focus in on quality teaching and learning. So Assistant Superintendent Molino and I right now are visiting schools. We're in the implementation stage, and we're asking questions about the 8 elements and how the action plans for learning are coming to life in the schools. And then there's the evaluation stage that happens at the end of the year, May and through to the summer through to August when we start again. And that evaluation stage is really the measurement. Did we make the right decisions for our schools, for our students, for our staffs? Did we do what we could that had the most impact on student learning? Is there something we could change? And that informs our decisions and the next steps for September. And it starts again. So this is a continuous loop that it is something that all schools follow, and as Assistant Superintendent Molina says, is part of our continuous improvement plan. So change is complex, and you can see by this chart that this chart is complex. And this chart, what it does is it highlights the essentials of the 8 elements. So everything you see up there is an element that contributes to the change in schools. So a strong team will contribute to change. A vision will contribute to change. Professional learning and skills, community, finances, environment, all are going to impact the change that occurs in schools. And if something is missing, as you can see by that chart, you can see on the right-hand side that there's going to be an impact. So there might be resistance or confusion or anxiety. So we never want to have anything missing. And so there's complexity to this work. And we truly believe that one of the most essential elements in complex change is that of team. And that's why we put it at the top. Working together, we are embodying collective wisdom, ownership, and accountability. We are sharing the direction, sharing the understanding, sharing the vocabulary, and doing the hard work together for our students. And again, who is involved? Well, you can see there's some lists there: school staff, community, district staff, and students. It's important that the whole system aligns. One of the things that we really truly believe in is the homeschool communication and the homeschool team. So you can see the triangle of student success there, highlighting parent, teacher, and student success. So all of these elements working together, again, because we believe that our work is to ensole our schools. Brings us back to the why. It's every student, every child mattering. And that is the challenging work that we do each and every day in our schools. And we can only do it together, and we rely on our action plans to help guide us through. We have an example here this evening of a wonderful school who's going through this process right now under the leadership of Principal Rhonda Crisco, and she's going to share the journey that her school has been on to embed the action plan for learning in her work.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Lansbury. I appreciate that. I'm actually so excited to share with all of you the work that we are doing at Wix. It's great work, and it's all grounded in our action plan for learning. So as you can see, our action plan for learning is to work collaboratively as a staff with families to support the students in their development of social, emotional, and literacy skills. The goal was created when I first came to Wix by the staff and based on the data that we had in front of us. And the benefits to this design is that we are able to meet the needs that the data highlights, and the staff has buy-in because they're the ones that made the goal. I also make sure to make intentional connections between our action plan for learning goal and our work and the district strategic plan. The benefits of doing that is that when the district provides resources and Pro-D to forward their work, we directly benefit by increasing our own capacity. So one aspect of the district strategic plan that we have adopted is professional learning communities, and the implementation of collaboration blocks in the master schedule, it plays a key role in that. So a few years ago, we discussed as a staff implementing collaboration blocks in our master schedule. We saw it as a means of improving practice and meeting student needs. So I spent some time over the summer designing the schedules, and we started right away in September. It was hard work, and at the beginning it was a little bit clunky, but we just continued, we persisted on, and now things run smoothly. And when our staff comes together to collaborate, they're focused on the 4 questions that guide our work. What do we want our students to learn? How do we know when they've learned it? What do we do when they don't learn it? And what do we do when they have? And so while we were working the kinks out of our collaboration blocks, we were also working on our culture. There we go. Sorry. We are a culture of yes. Yes to resources for instruction. Yes to provide time so the staff can observe one another or co-teach. And yes to Pro-D that improves instructional practice. It's also important to make sure that they have an opportunity to connect professionally, and the collaboration blocks are actually the ideal platform for that to happen. I also make sure they connect personally and have opportunities to create memories together. But I think the most important piece, it's the most important piece. I think of it as a community of communication. I blog twice a week, and in every blog, I'm highlighting the work that we've done in our action plan for learning. I highlight the work that we've done on our walk towards truth and reconciliation, and I highlight the work that we're doing towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. In addition to blogging, I'm also connecting with the PAC regularly, making sure that they understand ways that they can support their learning and be involved. And staff also readily communicate with families either by email, phone, or in person, but it's all really worked to create a positive relationship between school and home. And this, I think, is evident in our high attendance at community events. So for example, last January, we had a literacy night, which might not sound exciting, but we had 67% of our families show up and participate. So I'll just leave it at that. So as our collaboration time started running more efficiently and our community became very positive, people felt they were safe and they could be vulnerable with one another. And one of our teachers last year went to her collab group and felt safe enough to be vulnerable. She shared frustrations and concerns she had for some of her students, and her team just listened and wrapped around her, shared similar concerns they had for their students, and they brainstormed ideas and strategies and decided the best way to support these kids was by using RTI structures to meet their needs, or response to intervention, sorry. So they did this for 6 weeks and for 3 times a week, and the results were astounding. The student growth was nothing we had seen that year so far. They came back to the next staff meeting. They shared their successes. They shared things that they would tweak or change to make it run more efficiently. And the staff were amazed and were all over it. And we decided right then and there to implement whole school response to intervention structures starting the following year. Oh, I keep forgetting to change darn it. I'm sorry. So here's the culture of yes. And here we go. Willingness to share, RTI structures, So here we go. We have a sample of data. So they shared the story. We've implemented whole school. I designed the schedules throughout the summer. We came back. We started right in September. Each collaboration groups settles down, they pick a learning standard that they want to focus on. They administer a common assessment, which helps them to identify the specific skills each student, and I'll say that again, each student needs to work on. Then they create learning groups that are meant to address that one skill or set of skills. The learning groups can be 15 to 16 kids. It could be 2 to 3. It really just depends on what they're working on. And every single available adult in the building is working on this. So our resource teachers are taking a group. Our learning commons teacher is taking a group. Our ELL teacher is taking a group. And I'm taking a group. We're all on board. So you can see from the sample, the data. This is my friend B. He's a grade 2 Indigenous student. That first set of data on the left with the yellow and the red indicates that he didn't know all his letter sounds or names in October. We've had a couple of rounds of RTI. We do collect data at the end of each round, but this sample on the right is the most recent. And you can see the strides that he has made. So he had several variables that worked as barriers to his learning, but our systematic, explicit approach really worked to break those barriers down, and he's finally making strides. And I would just really like to point out, like, I used his data as something to show you the impact that this has on student learning, but this kind of growth is global, like throughout our school. He's not the only one. I would say we would be hard pressed to find a student not making growth. So our action plan for learning led to the implementation of collaboration in our master schedule, which ultimately resulted in the use of RTI, or response to intervention, as a structure. And RTI really is equity and inclusion with an instructional lens. And I will remember to switch my slide. Equity and inclusion. So students who require the extra time or support that they need get what they need to be successful. Students who need to be challenged get the opportunity to extend their learning, and staff feel great, good, successful about the work that they're doing. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Sorry for the slides, but I really appreciate being able to share the hard work that my staff has done, and the wonderful community that we have wrapping around us and supporting our work. Thank you.
So in conclusion, the action plan for learning, it's theory into action. It's theory into practice. And again, all the ideas that you read about in the strategic plan, in the enhancement agreement with the 4 land-based nations, all of those strategies come to bear in the school and in the classroom. And it's through the work of Principal Crisco, her staff, all coming together, that we see incredible differences for our students. So, and I'm pleased to say that the improvements we see at Wicks Brown are also happening in other schools as well. So.
Thank you. That was absolutely fantastic, you guys. Ton of great work being done. So thank you for sharing all that with us. For us, that is action plans for learning. Can I get a mover? Trustee Rye, seconded by Trustee Fox. Any questions or discussion? That the Board of Education receives a report on action plans for learning for information as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried unanimously. On to 8.2, settlement workers in school programs.
Thank you, Trustee Dickinson. Again, just thanks to the presenters and to Principal Crisco for coming out this evening and presenting about her action plan and the successes that are happening in her schools. And then on to settlement workers in schools program. The face of Langley is changing and has been changing over the last few years. And I don't want to take too much of the presentation that we're about to hear, but certainly the settlement workers in schools play an important role when it comes to the transition of our students into our schools. And I'm going to ask this evening District Principal Joanne Novo to present. along with, yes, sorry, Lisa Weaver. Thank you. Thanks.
So Settlement Workers in School is a comprehensive school-based settlement program that maximizes the integration and settlement of immigrants and refugee students and their families through a seamless systematic delivery model, recognizing that schools are natural community hubs and often first contact for newcomers. The Langley School program has been, or the Swiss program has been part of Langley School District since 2008 and is vital in supporting our English language learners and newcomers in Langley schools. In doing so, we help to promote our district vision to make Langley schools an inclusive and accepting culture. Swiss is funded by Immigrant Refugee Citizen Canada, which we refer to IRCC. So what do Swiss workers do and what can they do? In schools, the Swiss staff can support the families in various ways, such as registrations and connecting families and students with school staff. They'll often translate during IEP meetings and other important school meetings. They'll provide workshops such as understanding the BC educational system, how to support the child with literacy and homework, how to access the report cards of MyEdBC, and other software, usage of other software such as School Cash Online and more. Other supports that they can do and also do is a holistic support, case management of high needs students, families, for example, connecting the families with pediatricians and supporting them with the completion of all the forms and appointments to Sunny Hill or other health and community support services. They'll refer clients to adult language classes such as LINC or LEC or QPU. And we also provide conversational circles where parents can practice conversational English while discussing relevant topics. We'll connect the families or their clients, the parents, to other community programs and services as well as government services. We provide a variety of workshops, and at this time of the year, we'll be providing workshops on income tax. But we also provide workshops such as Life in Canada, health, and other things that are relevant to the settlement needs. Our SWIFT staff is comprised by 7 settlement workers, 2 youth settlement workers. We have a teacher career facilitator. We have a manager, Lisa Weaver, and we have 2 multicultural workers. And we, the staff altogether, we serve 13 different languages.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about eligible and ineligible clients. So with our IRCC funding, we're primarily funded to work with permanent residents. And so that would include a number of different categories. That would include our government assisted refugees. So for example, our Syrian refugee families or Karen refugees that came a number of years ago, or privately sponsored refugees that are coming through churches and whatnot. Skilled workers, people that come in on the point system, business class, provincial nominees, and then another category that aren't permanent residents, but our contract or our contribution agreement was amended last year to also serve Ukrainian citizens who are coming in on the QAP visa, and that's the Canada-Ukrainian authorization for emergency travel. So we're also supporting those families. And so in this last fiscal year, our fiscal year doesn't really align with the school district. So starting from April to January of this year, our staff served 1,278 eligible clients. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about our ineligible clients because this makes up a large number of people that we're working with. And so about 40% of the clients that we're serving are ineligible, so we're not funded to work with them. We've been given permission and encouraged to work with them, but we're not getting funding for these families. So this would include temporary residents, so people on work or study permits. These are
they would be called non-fee paying international students. So they're students in our system, and oftentimes they're becoming permanent residents. So we are working with these families. Refugee claimants are another category. They're not a huge population in Langley, but it is a significant group that does require a lot of support. Naturalized Canadian citizens, again, I mentioned the Syrian refugees. A lot of those kids have become Canadian citizens through applying, and so we're still working with them. And then children born in Canada to immigrant parents, we are also working with.
So just the growth in Langley. So if you look at the growth, 27% of our students are non-English speakers at home, or their home language is not English. So that's 20% in comparison to 2015, where it was 15%. So if we're looking at a growth, if you're looking at the English, where the top languages were English, in 2015, we had 17,000 students, 17,030 students. And in 2022, we have 17,087 students whose home language is English. So our growth in a district shows that mostly immigrants or well, students with a primary or home language not being English. In our district, we have 55 different languages, but these are our top languages that we have. With that said, we have our IRCC contribution agreement that's ending in 2025, and our new call for proposal, which we'll most likely start working on it next year. We'll need to really look at the numbers and plan accordingly to support for additional staffing with the IRCC. This also means our ELL numbers are increasing. With our September 2022 1701s, we have 1,921 ELL students in our district, and then we have 1,731 students in the elementary middle schools and 190 ELL students at the secondary level. And this is not a surprise to anyone. So this is kind of a map that we pulled from the 1701s, where home language other than English, and that's where the big population is at. So our Walnut Grove, Willoughby area, downtown core, and Alder Grove areas are our biggest population for our immigrant families. Okay, so why is our work important? Schools are primary place for settlement integration for immigration and refugee students. So our real work, what we want to do is we work on building community and support and care by connecting with the families and students and providing support to them to settle successfully in their new community or in a new country. Connection, care, relationship, building confidence, building success, and a big sense of belonging is what we strive for.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what some of our families are going through so that you can understand some of the work that that we do. And so there is a lot of differences between immigrant and refugee families. I think the main thing is that immigrants choose to come here, whereas refugee families don't. They're coming here in a time of crisis when they've experienced war or trauma. And so what we see is that a lot of their resettlement challenges are magnified and that much deeper and more challenging to overcome. But that said, we do see these issues with a lot of our immigrant families as well. Every family is different. So what we see is just kind of going around this this circle of what's going on with this family. A lack of personal esteem. So families are losing their status in their country, their jobs, their homes, a lot of things that they base their identity on. They're experiencing isolation in Canada. Some of our families are, you know, in remote areas on farms where they don't have cars or transportation. And so, so they're isolated also by their language skills. They don't have friends here or family. A lot of our families are experiencing a lot of survival guilt, like even with the earthquake that just happened. Families are on the phone and they're staying up all night. You know, they're worried about their family members that are in Turkey or in harm's way, like that are continuing to experience violence. Then there's also a lot of dependency. They may be dependent on volunteers or other family members or their children, and this kind of affects the family dynamic as well. And then what we see, this is probably true of all of our immigrant families. And I think our staff have noticed with COVID, especially, the family dynamics have been really challenging. And we're seeing a lot of youth with mental health issues. And so a lot of they're losing their cultural values and their ethnic heritage, and this kind of is a wedge between youth and their parents, and esteem for their mother tongue, or they're losing their language. And then we also see intergenerational stress and the roles reversing between parents and children, where the children learn English and learn our culture faster, and so become kind of more of a parental role where they're taking their parents to doctor appointments or to ICBC or translating for them and that kind of thing. And so this really creates a challenging family dynamic for both our refugee families and for our immigrant families as well. And this impacts our students in the school system. And so that kind of brings us to what are some of the barriers to education. And so I think it's important to understand that our refugee resettlement program in Canada is humanitarian. And so we're bringing in refugees that are most vulnerable. And so they come with a lot of health challenges often and learning disabilities. And so we have students arriving with undiagnosed disabilities and undiagnosed challenges. And so I think in the school system, we know that means there's no funding. And so our staff are working with them, trying to get them to doctor's appointments, trying to help them go through that process to get diagnosed. Then we're seeing a lot of trauma and behavior issues, cultural differences, where our staff are on playgrounds trying to help kids work through fights over soccer or things like that, where we see a lot of behavior issues happening. A lot of our parents, like we talked about, don't speak English, and so they have a really hard time helping their children and getting involved in school. So our staff are there trying to help with parent-teacher meetings and help parents kind of get involved and come into the school buildings. And then we also have students that are coming with a lack of previous education or gaps in their education. So, you know, you have a student that has been out of school for 5 years and they come into grade 9 and they can't do math at a grade 9 level. So what do you do with that student? And so those are some of the challenges. And then of course that leads to when they arrive at an older age, they age out of school and they kind of just start spinning their wheels and start getting into trouble. And so we're working with those kids as well. And then there's also these other issues of poverty and culture shock and language skills, and this kind of just creates all kinds of challenges for the kids that we're working with in school. So that said, what are we doing? So we've got a lot going on with our SWIS program, working with kids directly in schools. And so Joanne was mentioning some of the stuff that we're doing a lot with parents, but we're doing a lot in schools as well. So we've got youth workers at Langley Secondary and HD Stafford and RE Mountain. We're doing our best to expand that as availability, you know, schools are always short of space and whatnot. So we've got homework clubs going on, reading clubs, lots of social activities so that kids can make friends with each other and get to know adults in their building and just feel comfortable with other people. We've got spring break programs and summer programs and Pro D-Day activities. And then Joanne mentioned some of the workshops we're doing. We're also doing those things with youth. So how to apply to post-secondary, you know, what career programs are in the school district, kind of being a go-between with a lot that's already going on in the district and some of these vulnerable families. And then we also have a teacher at LSS doing a lot of career and job coaching for those kids that are aging out of the system. And then, yeah, like just the case management and wraparound support piece that we're working with schools to make sure that those kids that come in with health issues or learning challenges get properly supported. And opportunities. Am I doing that one? Am I doing that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just some of the challenges that we're facing with our SWIS program. We mentioned that our fiscal years don't align, so that creates a lot of challenges around around our funding where, for example, we will get funded until the end of March for a staff, and then we have a gap that happens. And so where we don't have the funding in place for the end of the year. And so there's a lot of, you know, last minute signing contribution agreements and that kind of thing happening. We're also experiencing a lot of rapid growth in Langley. And so that's been hard for our SWIS program to keep up with and for the funding model to keep up with. And then again, unexpected arrivals. So in the last year, we've had a lot of Ukrainian families arrive. And so how do we respond in a timely way with funding so that we can get immediate support to those families? And so that kind of brings us to this idea of opportunities and some of the things that have been discussed together. There's a lot of discussion with other school districts that have SWIS programs in their school districts and what we would like to see to make this a bit more manageable.
Okay. And we've been speaking with the BC Yukon IRCC director, and we've been doing that as collectively with other SWIS workers in the province, trying to looking at a grant model instead of what we have currently, and aligning our fiscal year. So that's our wish. That's our opportunity, our opportunities that we're looking for with IRCC currently. So any questions?
Any questions? Trustee Fox?
Thank you very much for your presentation, very thorough and much appreciated, not only your presentation, but the work you're doing. I was just recently, and I'll report more on this later, but I was just recently at a Metro Vancouver trustees meeting last Wednesday. The issues that you've raised, particularly in the last couple of slides, are pretty consistent across every district in the Metro Vancouver region. We're seeing an influx of immigrants across the board. And I think that the issue is understood. It's visually understood by the individual districts, and the voice is increasing in amplification in terms of approaching government agencies for additional funding. We're seeing students falling through the cracks, funding not consistent through the whole year. There's a number of issues like that. So at the BCSTA annual general meeting coming up at the end of April, I know there will be motions that will try to address this and get the BCSTA support in lobbying the government. So thank you. And I think the comments and the issues that you've raised are understood across all the districts in Metro Vancouver.
Great presentation. So yeah, I just have a couple comments, and then if no one else has any questions or comments, I'd like to make a motion. But first, I just want to start with, it took me a while working in the school district to realize that SWIS did not stand for people from Switzerland, and that why do we have a Swiss worker and not like a German worker? Or so it was Lisa, who was at my school, who showed me what the Swiss workers actually do. And wow, is that a busy job? And especially because of the reporting the way the contribution agreement is set up, so much of the time is just reporting on every minute of every service. And it's like nothing I've ever seen. And all of that time could be spent servicing more students. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on that before, if anybody else has any. Okay, I'd like to make a motion then that the Langley Board of Education write a letter to Langley's 2 members of Parliament urging Immigrant Refugee Citizenship Canada, IRCC, to consider a grant funding model rather than a contribution agreement for the funding of the Settlement Workers in Schools program to accommodate the unique needs of school districts to support families and students. In addition, the funding should be expanded to include ineligible clients, including but not limited to refugee claimants, those who were on work permits, and naturalized Canadian citizens, including Syrian and Karen refugees, as they often require settlement support. Do I have a seconder? Great, and I don't know, I know I sent the rationale and I feel like it was just presented to us, but if people want me to read it, I also could.
So we'll call the motion, that the Langley Board of Education write a letter to Langley's 2 members of Parliament urging Immigrant Refugee Citizenship Canada, IRCC, to consider a grant funding model rather than a contribution agreement for the funding of the Settlement Workers in Schools Swiss program to accommodate the unique needs of the school districts to support families and students. In addition, the funding should be expanded to include ineligible clients, including but not limited to refugee claimants, those on work permits, naturalized Canadian citizens, including Syrian and Karen refugees, as they often require settlement support. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you guys so much for coming in and your presentation. It was fantastic. You're doing amazing work.
Just want to add like how fortunate we are for Lisa. She's been here since the start in 2008, and so she has a wealth of knowledge, and just very grateful to have her on the team.
Thank you, Lisa. Lovely. All right, so we're going to move on to 8.3 District Calendar 2025 to 2026.
Thank you, Trustee Dickinson. This evening we have District Principal Kevin Reeve to present the 2025-2026 district calendar. As trustees are aware, we present the calendar to the public 3 years in advance. We keep 3 years of calendars on our websites, and it is time now to present the 2025-2026 calendar. In addition to that, the specifics around the current calendar for next year, we're going through currently going through partner collaboration and feedback, and we'll bring that back to the April meeting. So I'll allow District Principal Reeve to present.
Thank you, Superintendent Gill. So our proposed district calendar for 2025-2026 for consultation, we've gone through the calendar compliance to make sure that we follow the rules. The proposed district calendar has been reviewed to ensure compliance with all relevant school calendar regulations. The proposed district calendar allows us to meet the minimum hours for kindergarten, 853 hours, grades 1 to 7, 878 hours, and grades 8 to 12, 952 hours. The proposed district calendar that you will see on the next slide only details instructional days, non-instructional days, statutory holidays, and vacation days. As Superintendent Gill outlined previously, detailed school calendars for the next school year will be brought forward at the regular April meeting with specific information, including report card dates, parent-teacher interviews, design and assessment days, and report card preparation days. So this detailed calendar, all in yellow are vacation days, green are statutory holidays, and red are professional development days. the two biggest items on here you'll see are Christmas holidays, which align with Metro and the Valley, as well as spring break. We align with the majority, or we align with Metro and the majority of the Fraser Valley, which is very important to many of us in this room, myself included. So the consultation process, if the board approves initiating the process, district staff will meet with employee groups. Information will be posted on the district website with a link to the proposed district calendars and information on how to provide feedback. Similar information will also be brought through the district social media channels, and the calendar regulation requires a 30-day consultation process. That brings us to April, and the detailed yearly calendar will be brought forward for next year for the approval for the district calendar process. Recommended board motion that the Board of Education request staff begin the consultation process for the district calendar for 2025-2026.
Trustee Wilson?
Yeah, just that the blocks in yellow are referred to as vacation, but for a large portion of our staff, they are layoff. So I would love to see it if somehow it could say vacation/layoff, just because we are talking about staff and parents and students who all view the district calendar. Thank you.
Then request staff begin the consultation process for the district calendar for 2025-2026. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried unanimously. 8.4 International Student Program Tuition Changes.
Thank you. I'll be providing a verbal report for trustees this evening. Just as per Administrative Procedure 303, admission of international students, the superintendent is required to update the board yearly on fees for international students. This year we met with our district principal of ISP and the vice principal, and they've been in touch with our neighboring districts, Surrey and Abbotsford, the two districts we like to align our fees with. Both districts have increased their fees by $1,000 from $15,500 to $16,500, and we would like to, for the 2024-2025 school year, we are going to be increasing our fees for our ISB students. Part of the work at this time for our district principal and vice principal is the marketing of our programs abroad, and there is a requirement at this point to finalize our fees so that they can begin that process. Again, the alignment piece around Surrey and Abbotsford provides with equal kind of opportunity. In addition, we're still much cheaper than our metro districts beyond Surrey. We've always tried to maintain a bit of a price difference between our district and those districts, just to allow for a better deal for our students as they come to our district. In addition to that, our current summer school fees for international students are also going to be increased accordingly to $1,350 per course. It's still considerably less than the full course fee, but we did want to align the fee a little bit more to the total cost of fees for students, as many students were taking summer session fees for much less, and then therefore graduating earlier at a discounted rate from the district. So that is my report at this point, and I'll pass it back to the chair.
The Ward, second by Trustee Rye. That the Board of Education receives the report on international student program tuition changes for information as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, on to number 9, Policy Committee, 9.1, Notice of Motion. Return.
So trustees, you'll recall at the December 13th public board meeting, the board passed a motion to put this policy out for notice of motion. This policy, and it's a bylaw actually, the appeals bylaw. No feedback was received from the public.
Any comments, discussion, concerns? Right, that the school district number 35 Langley policy 13 appeals by law be given a first reading. All those in favor? Those opposed? Sorry, opposed? Yep. Okay. Great, and the motion carries. We're gonna do this a few more times because there's a few more readings here. Can I get a mover for the second reading? Trustee Rye. Trustee Ward. Seconded, thank you. School district number 35, Langley policy 13, appeals bylaw be given a second reading. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion carries. And this one needs to be unanimous. Can I get a mover, please? Trustee Fox, seconded by Trustee Neufeld. That the Board of Education of the School District number 35 Langley approves having all three readings of the policy 13 appeals bylaw at tonight's meeting. All those in favor? Those opposed? And it's carried unanimously. Last one for good luck. Can I get a mover, please? Trustee Rye. Yeah. And Trustee Fox, would you like to second that? Sure. All right. That the school district number 35 Langley policy 13 appeals bylaw be given a third reading, passed and adopted on this 21st day of February 2023. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Right, we are going to take a 5-minute recess, so we will come back at 8. right, welcome back. So next up, we have number 10, Education Strategic Plan Committee. I'm going to hand this over to Trustee Neufeld.
Thank you, Chair Dickinson. It was brought to the Education and Strategic Plan Committee on January 10th that the Langley Environmental Awareness Program Academy become a specialty academy. And tonight we're going to hear from Assistant Superintendent Moino. But first of all, and as he's making his way up, I'd like to move that the Board of Education approves that the current Langley Environmental Awareness Program become a specialty academy within the Langley School District for September 2023 as presented. Can I get a seconder? Trustee Ward, floor is yours.
Getting ahead of ourselves. Thank you, Trustee Neufeld. As was shared in the last Education Strategic Planning Committee meeting, about a year ago, actually, trustees recommended that we do some visioning and look at the LEAP, or the Outdoor Education Program at Fort Langley Elementary. Consultation with staff, with students, with parents took place from April 2022 till December 2022. During that feedback, combined with parent survey, made clear what the priorities of the program would be. And that priority was to grow the program so that those students who are experiencing outdoor education in that program from K to 4 could experience it in K to 5 and beyond. Upon review of that data and in looking at district admin procedures and policies, it became clear that the best route to long-term success and to achieving that goal was by turning the LEAP, or Outdoor Education Program, into an academy. Based on the needs of the program, including outdoor equipment, specialized staff training, the recommendation is that the fee for the academy is $175 per year.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing that.
No.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's in green. Oh, there we go. Just a quick question about now that it will have a fee, because it's an academy, will it now become part of the hardship fund? Or if a family can't afford that fee, will they be looked after through our regular means of supporting families?
The academy, any hardship considerations are made as with any academy in the Langley School District.
Seeing that there's no questions, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing that there's no opposed, carried unanimously. I'm going to move that the Board of Education approves the Langley Environmental Awareness Program Academy fee of $175 for the 2023-2024 school year. Can I get a seconder? Dickinson, Trustee Dickinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. 10.2, on February 7th, we had a presentation that DW Poppy get a rugby academy, and again, Assistant Superintendent Moino is going to speak to that. I'm going to move that the Board of Education approves the DW Poppy Secondary School Rugby Academy for September 2023 as presented. Can I get a seconder? Trustee Fox.
Phil. As shared in a previous Education Strategic Plan meeting earlier this year, DW Poppy is proposing a rugby academy. This is very much building on the strengths of the DW Poppy community, as well as growth in rugby, not only at DW Poppy, but also throughout the Langley School District and in the Fraser Valley. The proposal in the academy is to have 30 spaces. For the trustees' background, there are 3 other rugby academies in BC where students pay a fee. The one proposed in Langley is the most accessible fee at $600 per student for the entire school year. This would be the only rugby academy in the Fraser Valley. Based on the presentation of DW Poppy staff, including the proposed coach and teacher in the academy, Stuart Crowley, we know that the level of coaching will be at a very high level and that there will be a very high level of presenters that will come as a part of that program. Students will also end up having coaching and refereeing certifications, as well as a strong foundation in the district values of the Langley School District.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions? Seeing that there are no questions. Oh, sorry, Trustee Ward, yes.
No, I'm gonna let them do it. Okay, thank you. Just like to say, yeah, it was, Stuart did an incredible presentation. So we're in good hands when it comes to this academy, and to have the only one in the Fraser Valley is something else. So I can imagine this being a magnet for other people in other communities, even if they want to try to come to Langley. So, and it's perfectly situated in at Poppy that has a fantastic tradition. So I'm just very glad to be able to support this.
Mr. Wilson.
Great. I just also agree. The presentation we got was great. And this is something that I felt like should come for a long time, especially the success that the DW Poppy School has had in previous years with provincial championships, and just watching those young people excel at this sport is very exciting. And so all in favor of this. Thank you.
Seeing that there are no more questions, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. I'd like to move that the Board of Education approves the DW Poppy Secondary School Rugby Academy fee for $600 for the 2023-2024 school year. Can I get a seconder? Dickinson. All those in favor? Opposed? 10.3. Can I get a mover that the Board of Education approves the fees for specialty academies for the 2023-2024 school year as presented? Dickinson, and a seconder? Trustee Fox. All those in favor? Opposed? And a mover that the Board of Education approves the fee structure for the International Baccalaureate program at RE Mountain Secondary for the 2023-2024 school year as presented. A mover, Fox, seconder, Dickinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
All right, moving on to 11, new business. We have Trustee Fox with 11A, BCSTA report.
Thank you very much, Chair Dickinson. I shared with my colleagues on trustees here some of the updates on the Metro Vancouver BCSTA meeting of last week. Just for those people that aren't aware, as we prepare to go to the BCSTA AGM, which is at the end of April, individual districts are invited to put motions forward on various topics of interest and concern. And so I thought it fair to just give a capsule of these. I don't have the specific motions because we didn't share them, but because these are concerns that we may have as a district, but other districts they do as well. And so I know tonight there will be some motions coming forth. So for example, in Surrey, they will have a motion coming forth, which is a repeat of one from 2018 to fully fund the cost of moving portables from one location to another within the district when it's for growth, which of course is a concern of ours as well. So they will have a motion that, which means that we really don't have to put a motion forward. We can support their motion when it comes to the floor. They also will have one coming to fully fund the costs associated with the renovations to configure space within schools to accommodate future childcare requirements. We all know that now the childcare issue, preschool, pre-0 to kindergarten is becoming part of our mandate. And so there will be renovations of space. Burnaby, we just had a presentation with the Swiss workers today, and Burnaby is feeling the pinch of all the immigrant families as well. They'll have one considering ELL students arriving beyond the funding envelope, which is presently in place. And so they want to see that the funding be linear as opposed to on a grant basis twice a year. And then to reinstate COVID funding enhancement in this post-COVID era, covering issues such as custodial time and operational enhancements. We saw tonight the budget where it's costing us a significant amount of money to keep airflow and so on post-COVID in terms of what the COVID requirements were. So it's costing districts after that. Assess and enhance funding for post-COVID teacher absenteeism. So I think this is probably something which we saw in our own budget and again is a concern. The Family Affordability Fund, renew and fund the upcoming 2023-2024. I wrote that wrong down there on my sheet there. School year. And so we know that that was a one-year funding. We want to see that. They want to see that continue. I think we agree with that. The one thing I did suggest when we were discussing it was that we see these monies distributed in June as opposed to waiting till September. And for example, this year we got them in September. By the time our assistant superintendent Momino and his committee had gone through, we didn't even see the monies distributed till October. West Vancouver is interested in one that on technology and being able to include technology upgrades in the 5-year capital plan, which is interesting. And Vancouver, for example, the Single Mothers Campaign, there presently is free busing for under 12, and they want to see free busing expanded from 12 to 18. So that would include all school-age students. So other districts, I just wanted to give a landscape of what other districts are thinking about in our metro region. So the BCSTA is consolidating motions. They're all due by Friday. And there'll probably be a lot of congruence between districts, whether they be in the north, the Kootenays, the central areas, island, whatever. So what they will do is where there's motions that are somewhat similar, they'll bunch them together and put them together in a format that will be presented to the AGM for ratification or denial by the delegates from across the province. So I just wanted to give that background as part of my BCSTA report. I do have a motion to which I've been asked to forward from Board Chair Candy Ashdown, who's unfortunately not here with us today. She had a medical situation. So the motion is, and I'll read it out loud, be it resolved that the BCSTA actively urge the provincial government, specifically the Ministry of Education, to expand the BC Loan Forgiveness Program to include certified teachers working with children at publicly funded facilities throughout BC. She's provided a rationale. And there are other loan forgiveness programs in the province, but specifically looking at this for students in teacher education programs who will be working in our schools in due course. So I'll present that to substantive motion. If I could have it, pass it over to you for a seconder. You want me to carry it through?
Do you excuse myself from this? I recuse myself?
Oh.
Yeah.
You want me to, okay, you
Yeah.
recuse yourself and you want me to just finish this
Yeah,
off? then?
yeah, can you? Yeah.
Okay. Don't go too far.
Bring up. Oh, I am a teacher with a student loan. So that seems pretty,
Okay,
yeah, pretty straightforward to me, that I shouldn't be voting on this.
okay. You better go. Did she? Okay, all right, just can't vote. So,
I'll turn around, okay? Close my eyes.
no, Trustee Dickinson, I gave you the perfect out to go and get another chocolate
Oh, and a
brownie
yeah.
from the back room, and you balked at that one. Okay. So, did I have a motion? I present the motion as a seconder, trustee Ward. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Carry unanimously. Okay. Back to you. Thank you. Oh, I'm not in conflict, sorry.
All right, on to 11B, EA standards of practice. And this is with trustee Wilson.
Just, oh, there we go. Okay, be it resolved that the BCSTA advocate to the Ministry of Education and Childcare to A, prioritize establishing standards of practice for education assistance, and B, consult with and fully include education assistants and other educational partner groups in the implementation and oversight of the standards. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by trustee Fox. Oh. Oh, okay, it was seconded by trustee Ward. If it's okay with the chair, I'll read my rationale. Okay, we must recognize the valuable role that education assistants or EAs play in our education system. Currently, there are no standards for education assistants, and programs that are offered throughout the province vary from 2 weeks to 2 years in length. This issue has been raised by education assistants and their advocates for many years, and it is time that qualifications and requirements are established so that ongoing professional development and support can be determined. And education assistants and the districts they work for can feel confident in the level of professionalism being attained. Although this motion has been passed at a previous AGM, the action or status listed by the BCSTA is, in quotes, the Minister of Education has largely deferred this item to BCPC as it is an item largely addressed through bargaining. Yet we've seen with the bargaining process for the 2022-2025 period that the framework agreement states that's between the BC Public School Employers Association, BCPC, and the K-12 President's Council and Support Staff Union, number 18 in the framework agreement, is titled Education Assistant Credential Standardization, and it reads, should the Ministry of Education initiate discussions regarding standardized credentials for education assistants, the provincial parties will each send a letter to request participation in this process. So through the framework agreement, BCPC has made it clear it is a ministry process, not a bargaining process.
Are there questions, comments, discussion? No? All right, we'll call the question then. Question is that the BCSTA advocate to the Ministry of Education and Childcare to A, prioritize establishing standards of practice for education assistants, and B, consult with and fully include education assistants and other educational partner groups in implementation and oversight of the standards. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried unanimously. Right, moving on to 11.C, inclusion ed guideline, and that is back to Trustee Wilson.
Great. Be it resolved that the BCSTA advocate to the Ministry of Education and Childcare to review and make any necessary updates to the inclusive education guideline. Seconded by Fox. If okay with the chair, I'll read my rationale. Okay, rationale. The Ministry of Education and Childcare has been consulting with professionals and community members for the past 7 years. The last time the guidelines were updated was 2016 and it is out of date. Inclusive education guidelines need to be a living document and not a document that is created and then never changes. As we learn more about how students with designations learn, what they need to feel included, what they need to feel they belong will change as we gain the knowledge from those that with the lived experience. And I also want to point out that most policies or manuals do have a review date. With our policies in SD 35, we review them within every 4 years. We say that every single policy will be reviewed once per our 4-year term. And since this doesn't have a timeline on when it's reviewed, and the last time was 7 years ago, I just think it's good governance that it be reviewed.
I'd like to refer this motion to Education and Strategic Plan Committee for work before the cutoff for motions for the 2024 BCSTA AGM. Thank you. Bring that up.
Okay, I need a second on that motion. Trustee Wright. Okay, all those, are there any questions or? Okay, Trustee Ward followed by Trustee Wilson.
Yeah, I'm going to try to kind of figure out what my question is here, but how is that going to, like, I think it could be a really good idea, but could you explain further how that's going to benefit this?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. I think that we got this motion earlier today and I didn't have time to look at it and fully understand it. And I don't want it to go, I wouldn't vote for it without understanding it better.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I also had a similar question, just wondering why we would refer it. And I meant to preamble my motions, just letting trustees know that, you know, not every motion gets voted in favor of here that goes to the BCSTA, but as I will just speak to the referral, that would make it a whole extra year before this would come to the, or a year and a bit, because the AGM is actually in April. So just wanting to let people know that and say that I think this is something that could go forward as is and have discussion and debate at AGM and lots of other eyes and ears on it for any additions or amendments at that time.
Oh, I will speak to it. I believe that a referral is a great idea in the sense that anything that is coming from this board, I would like to be polished and in a position that it is going to best serve the children of our district. And I really think that taking the extra time to really sink our teeth into it and make sure that it is something that we are proud of going forward is good governance. So, Trustee Ward.
This is one that we actually have really good discussion on so far. So I'm really kind of glad for it because we've got all these unanimous decisions. I think you Trustee Neufeld raised an interesting point, but I accept what you're saying. I do think the time frame, although this was kind of put on us in short order, and you've explained that through email. And normally we do get motions more advanced time. I do think, having been at VCSTA AGM, there is, when something goes on the floor, there's robust discussion, so it gets a good chance to kind of get bounced around and vetted. So as much as I do appreciate what Trustee Dickinson offers, I think under other circumstances, I would entirely agree with you. But in this case, I think this would be appropriate. So that's just where I sit on it. Thank you.
Obviously, inclusiveness is very close to my heart. You're saying that these guidelines were updated and now they're outdated. What sections or areas of these guidelines are outdated that you think that we need to update?
Trustee Wright, it's a point of order. We can only talk right now about the motion to refer or to defer and refer to committee, not the actual motion on the table.
I just want to point out that if the motion to refer does not pass, then the motion will come back to the floor and we can discuss any questions trustees may have about this.
Are there any other questions? All right, so we will call the motion to defer. Or refer the motion, refer the motion to an education strat committee before the 2024 STA deadline date. All those in favor to defer? Refer. All those opposed? So the motion is defeated in a tie vote. And that puts the motion back on the table, as is for the inclusive ed guidelines. Yes.
Do you want me to repeat my question or?
No, the motion was defeated.
Defeated.
So now we're back to the motion that you put on the floor.
Nope, there we go. It's a minute sometimes. So you were asking if there were things that I felt were wrong in here. I didn't.
What things were outdated? Because I didn't get a chance to review the policy from 2016.
Well, there's a lengthy, gosh, I feel like it's 100 and something pages, but the section on developing IEPs, I felt like a lot of it didn't consult with the same people that schools have now realized that we should consult with, and outside agencies I didn't notice a lot of referring to. So mainly for me, it's that I believe any good policy and good governance needs to be reviewed because 7 years ago is not where we are in inclusive ed right now. And so there's just a lot of different language and things. And if you don't have people reviewing it, it's just good practice. So I just feel like because they haven't mentioned when they're going to review it next, that 7 years is a long time. And like I said, most places do have some sort of schedule with when they will review this. So that was my main intent behind the motion.
This and for this like year's AGM instead of next year's and come back and vote on it? And then on the next meeting or no?
There's a motion on the floor right now that the board has to deal with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just in response to Trustee Wright, there's no specificity associated with it. So if the motion were to pass tonight and it was to go forward, certainly there's time frame there between now and the AGM at which speaking notes could be evolved and put down and discussed from the floor at that time. So in answer to your question, if there's probably not time between now and Friday, if this were to pass. Is there time before the AGM to create speaking notes associated with it? Yes. I'm not sure what the committee meeting schedule is between now and the end of April. because it's the last weekend in April, it's the AGM, but it could be done then.
Eleven point C, I'll call the motion that the BC STA advocate to the Ministry of Education and Childcare to review and make any necessary updates to the inclusive education guidelines. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Great. On to 11D, accessible washrooms. And that again is Trustee Wilson.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to apologize. I meant to, before I read my motions, that these were late and only given earlier today. And I had intended on writing them last week, but had a family emergency. And I do agree that normally I would like to give more time for them. And I understand the hesitancy with this board, and I appreciate that you've passed the last few. Okay, so, and this one I am open to lots of amendments, and I'm hoping that there will be lots of discussion at AGM on any wordsmithing that it might need, but I just feel it's very important for me because the deadline's coming. So be it resolved that the BCSTA advocate to the Ministry of Education and Childcare to provide targeted funding to all schools for facilities upgrades to any current school washrooms that are not accessible. Can I get a seconder? And if it's okay with the chair, I'll read my rationale. Although new schools are built with accessibility in mind, many of the schools in our province are very old and have inadequate washrooms that cannot accommodate people in wheelchairs or with other diverse needs. It is not enough to have one accessible washroom per school, especially if that student needs to take an elevator every time they need to access the washroom. It also is not feasible to expect districts to come up with the funds out of their education budget to make these upgrades.
Fox.
Thank you, Chair Dickinson. We've had this discussion previously, and we discussed it in the context of our own district looking at the options of upgrades. And we had a presentation, I think, very well put together presentation from our Secretary Treasurer Isley about the costs, the codes, what it takes in some of the older schools to enable this to happen. And there are plenty of older schools that where this is an issue. It was interesting. We just had a tour of Dorothy Peacock. No, not Dorothy Peacock. Donna Gabriel. And their washrooms there. Very interesting configuration there. Certainly alluded to in your rationale by the fact that they're new. So, if my understanding then, if I could, to the mover of the motion, is you want this funded with targeted special funds based upon a criteria that the ministry puts out, not to come from our district funding, but to come in a separate envelope. Am I correct?
You are correct.
I can support the motion because I don't think we should be using our money to do it. And I'm not particularly optimistic that the ministry will find the money, but let's ask them anyway. So.
In my short time here as a trustee, I've heard this a few times now that accessibility in older schools for the washrooms is an issue. So I do support this motion, and I hope that we can make it, read a little better, more specific, and get more rationale behind it. As I understand that bathrooms in older schools do get remodeled if it is within the envelope of the earthquake. What's the word I'm looking for, Brian? Seismic. There we go. Thank you, Trustee Fox. So yes, I support this, and I hope that we can work it. And like Trustee Fox says, ask the ministry for some money. that we're not gonna get.
Any other call? I'll call the motion then, be it resolved that the BC STA advocate to the Ministry of Education and Childcare to provide targeted funding to all schools for facility upgrades to any current school washrooms that are not accessible. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried unanimously. Alrighty. With that, we will move on to number 12, trustee comments. We will start down with trustee Fox.
Quickly, I did a BCFDA update. I put on your desk BCPC winter update. Just two things out of that. Number one, we have a new Metro Vancouver rep, Donna Sargent, trustee from Richmond. And the second thing is, following our lead, Maple Ridge is now a part of Metro. They made a request to be included in Metro, and they, by vote of the delegates, were included. So, thank you. Thanks for everybody for coming. And I hope everybody had a good family day yesterday.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Again, it's nice to see people in the audience and residents and former trustees, Suzanne Pro, and our mayor, Eric Woodward. It's very nice to see him here as well. So just thank you everybody for tuning in. We're a little bit late here and we had good discussion. So, and I'm very thankful to you guys. I think we've got a really good board. So thank you.
I don't have much to say as usual. Thank you for coming out. It was a good meeting, but back to the motions, Marnie, we did kind of did get short a notice on them, and I do agree. I do agree with what Joel and Holly had said, that for the inclusiveness one, they didn't have the opportunity to read the guidelines and stuff. But that being said, I voted for it. Hopefully we can work together collectively as a group to present the wording at the AGM.
Great, thank you all. And I totally 100% would love to discuss it further and come up with some great strategies for how we can make sure that they pass at the AGM and things that we want to make sure we say. I just really want to thank you all for the fulsome discussions we've had tonight. And like I said, I don't usually send motions late, but I had a lot of things happen and life happens that way sometimes. So it's just unfortunate that there was a deadline for the AGM. And I think that besides saying get out there for Diversity Week, I just want to say I've talked enough tonight. So thank you to everybody who was here.
Not much to say, but thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
I'd just like to say thank you for bearing with me with my first public meeting tonight. Trustee Chair Ashdown is recovering from surgery, so I very much look forward to her coming back next week or next time, so I don't have to do this again. But yes, thank you all for coming out tonight. It was wonderful to see you all. Great presentations. Thank you guys for all your work, and go home. Oh, we got question period. That should come at the very end. All right, question period. Question period is provided at board meetings. The purpose is to ensure that those present and the audience have an opportunity to obtain clarification concerning business conducted during that meeting. Priority will be given to responding to one question per person before considering further questions from any individual. The following will help the public develop questions for question period at a board meeting that is keeping with the goal of a respectful and focused meeting. Questions need to be directed to the chair, not to staff. Number 2, need to be related directly on to the topic on the agenda. 3, need to be succinct, focused, and not be a statement. 4, may not be asked that are related to personnel or directed at an individual trustee. 5, may not be asked that are related to contract negotiations. And 6, The questioner shall provide their name so that it can be reflected in the minutes. All of the above are directions provided for the board policy number 7, board operations. The chair may answer, may defer to staff, or indicate a question may not be in keeping with the above guidelines. The board appreciates the public's interest and wants to ensure a professional meeting is conducted with question period focused on providing guests with the clarification they seek. Trustees also welcome questions from members of the public apart from question period. Their contact information is available on the school district website. So, questions from the public. I see we have Ms. Perot up there.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I appreciate it. And thank you, trustees, for a thoughtful meeting. I do have 2 questions if permitted. So I'll start with my first one on point 7, the capital plan slideshow that we watched from our secretary treasurer. We heard the discussion within the budget about $160,000 for Douglas Park accessible playground. To the chair, I would like to understand if the foundation of this playground will be fully accessible without curbs and a mat versus curbs and wood chips, so that our students, especially in our most vulnerable community, have the opportunity to access this fully.
Hey, wait a second.
So great question. So we're working with Douglas Park to make it accessible for all students. So we're looking at also utilizing that fund for the playground equipment itself, for the surface in terms of what we're doing. We want to look at grants and other opportunities to do that. But the hope would be out of that 160,000 that it would be fully accessible for students. And that would, to your point, without the curbs, without the wood chips, would make it accessible for all students. So yeah, that's what we're hoping. Yeah.
Proceed.
Do you have? Are there any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you kindly. On point 8, superintendent report action plan for learning, we saw a PowerPoint on there surrounding the conversation of who is involved, and it was the triangle of student success. To the chair, I'm interested in understanding in this action plan, will we see this, witness this triangle of success for our students embedded into our APs to ensure that there's full system alignment?
Sorry, just for clarification, embedded into our APs?
Staff setting goals and school direction focus of the year, the community working with staff to support, etc. District staff support the work of the school through the professional development and students' growth in areas identified in the action plan. The student success, the triangle student of success involves student, parent, and teacher. And so when we look at that conversation that we were talking about whole system alignment in the presentation, and we talk about whole system and we look at change management, will we see this moving into that area of our work as a district? And I'm citing specifically our APs to support how communication will move towards and between parents, students, and educators.
We currently do have some APs that address communication with parents, but certainly our practice has been in the development of our action plans to include as many of our stakeholders and rights holders. It is the practice will continue. I don't know that we're going to be embedding that in an AP specifically at this time, but certainly it's the practice that's not just encouraged but expected for our administrators.
So there, if I may, a follow-up to clarify. So whole system alignment doesn't necessarily mean embodying that part of our system.
Again, I think I'm not fully understanding your question, so maybe it might be a good idea if you could, I'll write it down and then I can get back to you at a later time. Okay.
Hello.
Tonight, everyone. This is my first attempt at this, so bear with me. My name is Sam, and my question is with regards to the action plan for learning. Is there a plan that supports the district-run childcare programs and early learning programs within our district?
I'm going to ask Assistant Superintendent Lanchberry to have just a few minutes to address the question.
Programs and early learning programs.
Is this on? Okay, thank you. Right now, we acknowledge that we are a 0 to 12 system and that we are already embedding childcare and early learning programming into our action plan for learning. Every single school works to have a pre-K and K to 12 programming for students. And so they're part of the action plan for learning and action plans for learning in schools. Does that answer your question? Okay, can I clarify?
Again, like I apologize because this is my first go around at this. You had mentioned, am I allowed to ask clarity? Okay. There was mention that the district recognizes that we are a birth to grade 12 program. Where will I find that? Grade 12.
That is also stated in our strategic plan. If you look at our strategic plan, there's a whole section on early learning under educational opportunities. And so our action plan for learning reflects the strategic plan. So everything that we do, it aligns with the strategic plan. So you'll see it in there. References the early learning framework. Yeah, you're very welcome.
Adjournment moved by Trustee Fox. Seconded by Trustee Rai. It is 9:49.
39.
Oh, 39. I think I need new glasses. I can't read back there. And this says it's 9:01. I know that's not right. All right, so that the meeting be adjourned at 9:39. Oh, yeah, all in favor? All opposed? Carried unanimously. And good night, everybody.